Let's move on to the Sabres, man. Buffalo, where are we at? I mean, here's the thing. I'm not even a Sabres guy. I've gotten fired up on their behalf a few times. My argument is, and I've actually seen this lately on X, is that so many fans are now on that conversation of did Buffalo bring in too many similar guys? Like I think we were talking about it off air a little bit, like whether it's like a Jack Quinn or certain guys that I guess in this demographic who are very skilled players, very sometimes one dimensional. What's your stance right now to talking to Sabres fans, the team itself, certain players that obviously are going to stay with this team long term, whether it's a Tage or whoever you want to bring up, but then other guys that do you start having that conversation that maybe use those guys as assets to get more established guys in here?
It's like worst case scenario for us this year. I mean, going into the year and looking at our lines, and you're like, wow, we actually have somewhat of a well-rounded team. I know the fan base wasn't that bought in just because it's been 13 years, but looking at the lines before, it's like, wow, you got a third line of Greenway, Zucker, and McLeod, and you got a fourth line that is actually going to throw a hit, and then your top two lines are your scoring lines. Well, you have Dylan Cozens has been talked about a lot recently. He's been struggling, and then when he's a guy that you rely on, you can't have that. And then Jack Quinn's been struggling really bad. So I like there's been talk about him maybe going down for an AHL conditioning stint. So um it's super tough. But yeah, you look at the future, I mean, we're talking about there's been a lot of talk in the media recently. I know Elliot Friedman mentioned it on 32 Thoughts of like guys who've been traded away from Buffalo and then they just explode. But I don't know if really that's the case. I mean, you look at Sam Reinhart, he was good in Buffalo. He was really good. He was a bright spot on a really bad team for a couple years. And even there was times where Jack Eichel got hurt and you were like, oh wow, Sam Reinhart's carrying his own line.
Yeah.
Same thing with Jack Eichel. Like he didn't explode when he went to Vegas. He was always great. He would get injured for about 20 to 30 games a year, but he was always great. And so I don't know if this narrative of like guys leaving Buffalo, other than Brandon Montour is the only guy that really stands out. So
Yeah, I was gonna say Montour really flipped. I'm so on your point of like the Reinhardt thing because yeah, sure on paper, like guys like Reinhardt and O'Reilly left and won cups on their like on their own merit kind of thing where it's like I mean Eichel's different, right? Because there's the whole health aspect and so many
mhm.
different layers to that. He was also like kind of the franchise player there. But Reinhardt and O'Reilly, like at the end of the day, they went to those teams and there's star players around each of those players in a way, especially Reinhardt. Like I'm with you. I think Reinhardt was so good in Buffalo, but when you go to Florida and have that established winning and also established skill set with Barkov specifically, like I think Buffalo didn't have that per se in terms of a guy that was like already developed. Eichel was kind of brought in. I don't know if you're catching my drift, but like Eichel was coming in as kind of that young up and coming franchise player where Reinhardt
Mhm.
already went to more of an established built structure if you're catching my
Yeah.
drift.
Yeah, no, for sure. So like Montour is definitely the only guy where I would flat out say, yeah, he was underused in Buffalo. He was like healthy scratch sometimes. He was
Yeah.
on this third pair, and then he goes somewhere else. And that's totally like that happens all the time. You see it in baseball specifically. Like teams like the Tampa Bay Rays will be like, oh, that guy's totally being underused. You see like Isaac Paredes, and then they bring him in. Next thing you know, he's a star. Um, in hockey, I wouldn't say that's as popular other than like guys in the AHL like Mason Marchment when he was brought up
Yeah.
and Verhage. But anyways, like Dylan Cozens and those guys that we mentioned earlier, Eichel and Reinhardt, you could be like, okay, when he got traded to Florida, everybody's like, okay, everybody calm down. Like, let's prepare for him to have a unreal year because you saw it coming. A guy like Dylan Cozens, we're watching. I don't want him to be traded by any means. I love Dylan Cozens, but he is struggling right now. He hasn't been himself, not even himself. I don't even know what is himself. He had a great year 2 years ago. Last year, we were still riding the high from 2 years ago. So we're like, oh, he'll get it back. He'll get it back. And he hasn't. He looks like he can't control a puck. But like we said earlier, hockey is such a mental game.
Yeah.
And so he's struggling. I could see him going to another team and being a top six center and being okay. But I really don't think he's a player that you could trade and really regret it and see him explode on another team, especially with the way like Elliott's talking about him. Like he's a very coveted, like you'd get a player that you'd be happy with getting back. And those other trades, like if you're looking at the O'Reilly one, that worked out for us, but we got prospects back. And the Montour trade, we got legit nothing back. We got a third round pick back. With Reinhart, we got Kulik, well, a first round pick and Levi back. You're getting prospects back. If you're trading Dylan Cozens, you're not trading for a prospect back. If they do, I will like freak out. I will absolutely freak out. But we're in a spot where we have to get better. There's no more like going back. We have all the prospects.
Yeah.
So, you know,
I was gonna say, one team that I've kind of put out there in terms of Dylan Cozens, and I've seen it a couple times online, is you just said it yourself. You wouldn't want prospects back for Dylan Cozens. So a team like Calgary calls, for example, who to me is not ready to go on a playoff run, even if they surprise and somehow squeak into the wild card. But they have a
mhm.
lot of those like either playoff experience guys or veteran guys, whether you want to talk about Nazem Kadri, who's won a cup, Blake Coleman, who's won a cup, Mikael Backlund, who's got a lot of experience. Like, are those the kind of guys you're looking at, or is that not enough to be part of a Dylan
um,
Cousins return? Like, is it that, or is it you just don't trade him unless you're getting like basically the equivalent of a Dylan Cousins, like a 23, 24-year-old second line center?
no, I'm totally okay with getting a more veteran guy, like even like a Kadri type. But like I was thinking, I mean, he's only got 1 year left, which would stink. But maybe you make a trade with like a San Jose who's got Granlund, who's popping off this year. He's only got 1 year left, so San Jose might have to add a couple things. I was thinking maybe Ferraro or something. I don't know, but like you want to get a center that you can replace him with. Maybe it's an older guy with 2 years left or 3 years left, and then supplement that with picks around it. But right now, like if we're talking from this point on till the end of the year, there are so many centers in the league that I would want on my team over Dylan Cousins. Um, and that's what Buffalo has to worry about right now. They have to worry about this year. Their whole Rochester team is just full, and more than that in the prospect base is just full of guys who in the next 2 or 3 years could take over Dylan Cousins' spot like so easily. You look at Ostlin, you look at Kulik, you look at Wahlberg even. So and Hellenius, like people were saying he was NHL ready. So I'm not too worried about like you get a guy that can come in and step in and be good this year, like a Granlund, maybe surround the trade a little bit more with more coming back Buffalo's way. But let's not worry about that top six center spot. We got so many young guys that could come in and fill that role in a couple years.
Yeah. I was gonna say for fans' sake, I think if you do trade Cousins, trade him to the Western Conference. Like you don't want a Sam Reinhart situation where he's right in your face. At the same time, I was gonna say, man, if you do think about the Florida perspective, it's actually such a more broader conversation because think about how many guys Florida's brought in that were like not good at all. And this is not a Buffalo thing. I think this is where Sabres fans need to be reminded. I know as fans of a certain team and Leaf fans do this very much, you want to make it all about like the
Yeah.
team and make it about how it's referenced to the team. But when you look at Florida specifically, think about how many guys revived their career or jump started their career in Florida. Gustav Forsling was floating through waivers on multiple
hmm
teams, being seventh defenseman in the AHL, goes to Florida. Now he's regarded as a top 20 defenseman in the National Hockey League. He just won a Stanley Cup. You look at
Yeah.
Carter Verhaeghe. Verhaeghe was part of like a five random prospect trade that went to the Islanders for Michael Grabner. The
hmm
Islanders didn't even use Verhaeghe, and then Tampa had him on their third line, and then he goes to the rival Florida Panthers and is one of the better left wingers in the conference. Then you also look at Sam Bennett, who was like shoved down the Calgary Flames lineup, was like a fourth liner, scratched some nights. He goes to he scratched on the Calgary Flames, go to the Florida Panthers, wins the Stanley Cup, and now he's on Team Canada.
Yeah.
Like,
No,
it's not just a Buffalo thing.
no, trust me, like even on Buffalo Sabres Twitter and stuff, I think the fan base generally knows it's not a Buffalo thing. I think some of the national media who are looking on the outside in, they're the ones saying that what's Buffalo messing up again? Oh, it's Buffalo this. In the fan base, as far as I've seen, we're pretty confident that like, okay, it's not just us that this is happening to. It's like it's pretty confident on that. Where I will say Buffalo has an issue is um, putting these players in the right situations and stuff. And I don't think they're rushing guys at all. Dylan Cozens could have been rushed in the first year, but then the second year comes off and has a great year. So there's been a lot of talk about Buffalo rushing guys, which I don't really think is the case at all. Owen Power has been great.
Thanks for watching this video, guys. Hit that subscribe button, like, notification bell, all that good stuff. Definitely comment your thoughts below, and going to be making more videos, more podcast appearances. So I hope you guys stay in touch. Reach out to me on social media and Hot Take Hockey everywhere. Talk soon. Peace.